I needed to clean this up.
Why are you still here?
To talk. It was here. I knew it. Careful. We need to see what it says.
You have 3 days to vacate. The papers are signed.
No, you can't do this! This shop is everything. These are the records we need to reconcile the accounts.
I understand. They explain the discrepancies, right?
Yes, they resolve everything. Look closer. This is the ledger.
I believe you. We have to do this.
We will. Put them back. It's time.
What was that?
Oh.
Something important.
The barbershop sat in silence, neon letters flickering faintly against the cracked glass windows, as the last hum of traffic faded down the empty Chicago street. Hannah Kim paused at the door, her hand hovering over the brass handle, feeling the weight of the past pressing against the present. She had been away from this place for too long chasing work and life, but tonight something drew her back. The sidewalks were deserted, the only sound the soft shuffle of her shoes against the worn concrete as she stepped inside. The familiar scent of talcum powder, old leather, and faint traces of aftershave wrapped around her like a memory she hadn't realized she missed. Dust motes danced in the narrow slivers of yellow light cutting through the window blinds. Hannah grabbed the broom leaning against the corner and began sweeping, each stroke pulling years of unspoken stories and quiet sacrifices across the red leather floor. Her eyes wandered to the faded photographs on the walls, her father smiling beside the chair he had polished countless times, his hands always steady, his gaze always warm. She paused, catching a glimpse of something under the chair. A plain envelope slightly crumpled. Kneeling, she retrieved it, the paper crackling softly in the otherwise still room. A note inside read only, "Don't trust the bank letter." Hannah's brow furrowed as her heart quickened, a knot of curiosity and concern tightening in her chest. The radio in the corner, long unplugged during the day, sputtered to life with a soft soul melody, filling the room with the gentle rhythm of past conversations and laughter that once echoed here. She ran her fingers over the worn leather of the chair, remembering the quiet evenings she spent watching her father sweep the floor after closing, his voice low and calm as he shared fragments of life she had ignored in her impatience to grow up. Tonight, the barbershop was more than a building. It was a living testament to perseverance, a repository of unspoken love and diligence. Hannah felt a pang of realization. This was her inheritance, not just of property, but of resilience, humility, and dedication. As she continued to sweep, her movements careful and deliberate, she thought of the nights her father worked a second job to keep the shop alive, the customers who had treated him as family, and the silent battles he had faced alone. Every sweep seemed to lift more than dust. It lifted memories, regrets, and the quiet understanding that she was now the keeper of this space. The clock ticked steadily, each second punctuating the emptiness with a soft reminder that she was the only one here now, yet not truly alone. Hannah straightened, looked at the neon sign casting a warm glow across the dusty floor, and felt the stirrings of determination. The shop was hers, its stories hers, and the night stretched ahead with the promise that she would uncover the truths hidden in plain sight, beginning with the envelope in her hand. The air felt thick with anticipation, as if the walls themselves waited for her next move. And Hannah knew that this night was just the first act in a story she had not yet fully understood. The moment Hannah Kim placed the envelope on the worn wooden counter, the silence inside the barbershop felt heavier, as if the walls had absorbed every word her father never said. She stood still, listening to the faint hum of the neon sign outside flickering through the glass, until a sudden vibration from her phone broke the stillness. Unknown number. One message. If you are inside the shop, do not sign anything from the bank. Her breath caught, and for a second, the room seemed to tilt slightly around her. She turned toward the front window instinctively, half expecting someone to be watching from the empty street, but only the reflection of the glowing sign stared back at her. The radio, which had been playing softly without explanation, shifted to static for a brief moment before returning with an old soul track, deep and slow, filling the space like a memory refusing to fade. Hannah gripped the edge of the counter, trying to connect fragments that did not yet form a clear picture. Her father had always been quiet about money, about stress, about anything that could disturb the fragile calm of this place. To her, he had always been steady, almost unshakable, but tonight that version of him felt like a carefully maintained illusion. The bell above the door suddenly rang, startling her. An elderly man stepped inside, a regular customer she vaguely recognized from childhood, his presence carrying the weight of familiarity. He paused when he saw her, then slowly looked around the empty shop as if confirming something he had long expected. He did not smile. Instead, he said quietly that he had heard the shop was on borrowed time. Hannah asked him what he meant, but he hesitated, glancing toward the barber chair as if it could answer for him. After a long silence, he only said that her father had been fighting something alone for a long time, something he never allowed anyone to see. Before she could ask more, the man placed a small folded receipt on the counter, slid it toward her, and left without another word, the door closing behind him with a soft finality. Hannah unfolded the paper, revealing a record of overdue payments tied directly to the barbershop address, numbers stretching further back than she expected. Her mind raced as she looked at the familiar walls again, now feeling less like a place of comfort and more like a silent witness to hidden struggle. The envelope, the message, the stranger's warning, and this receipt all began to align into something she was not ready to fully understand. She turned slowly toward the barber chair, its red leather dim under the low light, and for the first time it no longer felt empty. It felt occupied by everything her father had carried alone, and Hannah realized that staying here tonight was no longer just about cleaning, but about uncovering a truth that had been carefully buried in plain sight. Hannah Kim sat on the edge of the red leather barber chair, the dim glow of the neon sign casting long shadows across the worn floorboards. The envelope in her hand felt heavier now, as though it carried the weight of every unspoken word her father had left behind. Her eyes traced the familiar lines of the shop, from the chipped wooden counter to the faded photographs of her father with his customers, each smile a fragment of a life she had only partially known. She unfolded the receipt from the elderly customer and examined the numbers carefully, realizing that the overdue payments went back years further than she had imagined. The sum was daunting, but more than that, it revealed a pattern of silent endurance, her father carrying burdens alone to shield her from worry. Hannah leaned back, letting the chair support her as memories of her teenage years flooded in, nights when she had complained about minor inconveniences while her father worked double shifts, nights when she had left for school unaware of the sacrifices made in quiet corners of this very room. Her hands tightened around the envelope as she began to understand the depth of his efforts, the lengths he had gone to protect both her and the legacy of this barbershop. A soft breeze shifted through the cracked window, stirring the faint scent of talcum powder and old leather, and with it came a whispered understanding. She was no longer just a visitor in this space. She had inherited responsibility. The radio, now playing a familiar soul melody, seemed to pulse with her heartbeat, every note reinforcing the connection between past and present. Hannah rose, moving methodically through the shop, brushing the dust from shelves, aligning tools and combs as if the act itself could bring clarity to the tangled history she now faced. She paused at the small desk in the corner, rifling through drawers she had never opened, uncovering faded invoices, notes from suppliers, and letters that hinted at negotiations she had never been privy to. Each document was a puzzle piece, the picture slowly coming into focus. Her father had managed more than a business. He had managed a legacy built on perseverance, trust, and quiet sacrifice. Her pulse quickened as she pieced together the implications of the bank warning, the unexpected receipt, and the untold hours of labor. Hannah realized that the path forward was not yet clear, but her resolve crystallized. She would confront the obstacles with the same determination her father had shown, and the barbershop would not fade into memory. Instead, it would remain a beacon of endurance, a space where the stories of the past were honored, and the lessons of resilience could be carried forward into the uncertain nights. Ahead, each sweep of the broom a step toward uncovering the truth hidden within the walls of the shop. Hannah Kim carefully examined the stack of documents she had discovered in the barbershop drawers, the yellow glow of the neon sign casting long, shifting shadows across the floor. Each paper told a story she had never been told, revealing a series of overdue payments, unpaid suppliers, and bank notices that her father had quietly managed alone for years. The numbers were staggering. Yet the way her father had arranged them showed meticulous care and an unspoken determination to protect the family legacy. She traced her finger along the columns of figures, feeling the weight of responsibility settling firmly on her shoulders. The soft hum of the old radio filled the space with a soulful rhythm, almost like a heartbeat, reminding her of nights she had spent in the shop as a teenager, listening to her father talk quietly to his customers, imparting wisdom without ever revealing his own struggles. Hannah realized that this barbershop had always been more than a business. It was a living archive of her father's resilience and sacrifice. Her gaze fell on a small locked drawer in the corner desk, previously unnoticed, its brass handle worn smooth from years of use. With a deep breath, she lifted the envelope that had started her journey tonight and used it to carefully nudge the drawer open. Inside lay a collection of letters from the bank, some never sent, others returned marked with stamps and notes in her father's precise handwriting. They chronicled threats of foreclosure and warnings about unpaid loans, yet also included careful plans for repayment and notes about friends who had offered quiet help. The realization struck Hannah sharply. Her father had been managing a financial tightrope to keep this place alive, never burdening her with the truth. The air in the barbershop felt heavier, charged with both reverence and urgency, as she understood that her next steps were crucial not only to preserve the shop, but also to honor her father's sacrifices. She ran her hands over the edge of the barber chair, feeling the familiar grooves of worn leather, and knew she had inherited more than a business. She had inherited the strength and tenacity to see it through. Every sound, every shadow, every flicker of neon seemed to echo the presence of her father's determination, urging her forward. Hannah folded the letters carefully and placed them back in the drawer, resolving to uncover the full story behind these silent battles, and to make choices tonight that would shape the future of the barbershop, while keeping the essence of her father's legacy intact. The quiet of the shop was profound, yet it resonated with a promise. This night was only the beginning of understanding, and Hannah felt a stirring of resolve, the first clear step in a journey that would demand courage, wisdom, and unwavering dedication. The moment Hannah Kim closed the drawer, the weight of everything she had just read did not leave the room. It stayed inside her chest like a second heartbeat. The barbershop felt different now, no longer just a place filled with dust and memory, but a fragile structure holding years of silent struggle. She stood still behind the counter, eyes fixed on the barber chair where her father had once worked through endless days, and for the first time she did not see comfort in it, only the echo of exhaustion he had hidden so well. The neon light outside flickered again, casting unstable shadows across the floor, as if even the building itself was uncertain about what came next. Hannah reached for the envelope again, but before she could open it further, her phone vibrated sharply against the wooden counter. Another message from the unknown number. This time it was longer. Your father refused help from everyone, but the bank is not the real problem. Check the second account under his name. Her breath slowed, not from relief but from the realization that the story was still deeper than she thought. She turned immediately back to the desk, pulling out every document again with more urgency, her fingers moving faster, searching for anything labeled with a second account or secondary record. Beneath the stack of supplier invoices, she found a small folded ledger, hidden between two old appointment books. It was not official paperwork but handwritten entries in her father's precise script. The entries were not expenses or debts but names, dates, and small amounts of money sent regularly, sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly. Hannah froze as she read the first page. These were not payments to banks or suppliers, but quiet transfers to individuals she did not recognize. Some entries were marked with short notes like rent assistance, medical support, and new arrival. Her mind struggled to connect the meaning, each line breaking the image she had held of financial collapse. Instead of only debt, there was something else, something far more intentional. Her father had not only been surviving, he had been supporting others in silence, people she had never heard him speak about. The realization hit her like a slow wave, changing the shape of everything she believed about him. She leaned back against the counter, staring at the ceiling as if answers might be hidden there, while the radio shifted into another old soul track, its rhythm steady, grounding, almost like a voice reminding her not to panic. Hannah looked again at the ledger, tracing the last entry dated just 2 weeks ago. A small amount sent with a note that simply read, "Keep the door open." For a moment she did not understand what door he meant, but then her eyes drifted to the barbershop entrance, to the worn handle, to the space where countless strangers had once come not just for haircuts but for conversation, safety, and presence. Slowly, the truth began to form. This place had never been only about cutting hair. It had been a refuge built by her father for people like him, immigrants carrying invisible burdens. And now, as Hannah stood alone in the middle of that quiet room, she realized that the responsibility she inherited was not just to save a business, but to continue something far more fragile, a promise her father had been keeping alive long before she ever understood it existed. Hannah Kim stood motionless in the middle of the barbershop, the handwritten ledger still trembling slightly in her hands as if it carried a pulse of its own. The silence around her was no longer empty, it was filled with the weight of everything she had just discovered, each name in the ledger echoing like a quiet confession from her father's hidden life. The neon light outside flickered again, briefly dimming the room before returning in a soft amber glow, and in that moment Hannah felt as if she was standing inside two timelines at once, one where her father was simply a barber, and another where he was something far more complex, a silent anchor for people who had nowhere else to go. She moved slowly toward the window, looking out at the empty street, then back at the barber chair, and for the first time she did not see a business that was failing, but a fragile system of care that had been built quietly over years without recognition. Her phone vibrated again, breaking the stillness with sudden urgency. Another message from the unknown number. The second account is not in the bank records you have. It is under the community trust ledger inside the storage cabinet behind the mirror. Hannah turned immediately, her heartbeat rising as she approached the wall mirror behind the barber station. She had cleaned this area earlier, wiped dust from its edges, but she had never thought to move it. Now, with careful hands, she felt along the frame until she noticed a slight looseness at the side panel. With a slow pull, the mirror shifted forward, revealing a narrow hidden compartment built into the wall. Inside was a small metal box, old and slightly rusted, locked but not sealed tightly. Her fingers hesitated for only a moment before she opened it. Inside were neatly organized envelopes, receipts, and handwritten notes, all labeled not with financial codes but with names of people and short descriptions of their situations. There were entries marked single father, recent arrival, medical emergency, and temporary shelter assistance. Hannah felt her breath tighten as she realized these were not business records in the traditional sense, but something closer to a private support network her father had created within the barbershop itself. Each envelope contained small amounts of cash or records of help given quietly, without expectation of return. As she sifted through them, she found one final envelope placed at the bottom, thicker than the rest. On the front was her father's handwriting, simple and steady. "If you find this, then you are ready to understand." Inside was a letter addressed to her, written weeks before. It explained that the barbershop was never meant to be only a place of work or income, but a shelter for those who had no voice in a new country, a place where dignity could be preserved without asking permission. He wrote about the loneliness of immigration, the invisible weight carried by those who arrived with hope but no safety net, and how he had chosen to use every extra hour, every extra dollar, to build something no ledger could fully measure. Hannah lowered herself slowly into the barber chair, gripping the letter as the full reality settled into her. The business she thought was struggling was also something far more delicate, a quiet promise made to strangers who trusted her father without ever knowing his name beyond the chair he stood behind. And now that promise had been passed to her, not as an obligation written in law, but as a responsibility written in memory, waiting for her to decide whether it would survive beyond this night. Hannah Kim's hands trembled slightly as she carefully closed the metal box and tucked the envelopes back into the hidden compartment behind the mirror, the weight of responsibility settling heavily on her shoulders. The barbershop felt different in this moment, as if the walls themselves were acknowledging that she now understood something her father had kept from everyone, including her. She walked slowly toward the front of the shop, brushing her fingertips across the worn red leather of the barber chair. Each groove and crease a silent testament to countless days of work, patience, and quiet generosity. The radio continued to play softly, a gentle soul track that filled the empty space, reminding her that despite the late hour, she was not alone in the legacy she now carried. A sudden knock at the door startled her, sharp against the hum of the night, and Hannah instinctively moved toward it, peering through the glass into the deserted street. A man stood there, middle-aged, neatly dressed, his posture formal yet not unkind. She recognized him immediately as the landlord who had leased the barbershop to her father for decades. He raised a hand slightly, acknowledging her presence without stepping forward, and spoke in a calm voice that carried over the small distance. "I am here to discuss the lease. The bank sent a notice, and without action, the shop may be at risk." Hannah nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and determination rise within her. She understood now that this was not only about finances, it was about preserving the promise her father had quietly upheld. She invited him inside, motioning toward the familiar space that had been a part of her childhood, and they both walked carefully around the barber chairs and counters, the air thick with unspoken understanding. The landlord laid out the options, emphasizing urgency, but Hannah, recalling the ledger and the hidden envelopes, realized there was more at stake than mere business survival. This shop was a refuge, a silent community her father had built for those with no voice, and it was now her responsibility to continue that work. As the discussion progressed, Hannah's mind raced with strategies, thinking about how she could navigate the immediate financial threat while maintaining the spirit of the place. She did not yet know all the details, but she understood one crucial truth. Whatever the challenge, she would not abandon the legacy of care her father had embedded in every chair, every envelope, every corner of the barbershop. The landlord eventually left, leaving Hannah alone once again, the door swinging softly behind him, and she returned to the red leather chair, placing her hands on its worn edges, feeling the pulse of her father's dedication coursing through her, and for the first time, a quiet resolve settled over her like the warmth of a lamp in the long dark night. Hannah Kim remained inside the barbershop long after the landlord's footsteps faded into the quiet street, the echo of their conversation still hanging in the air like unfinished business. She stood behind the barber chair, her palms resting on the worn red leather, feeling for the first time not just the weight of memory, but the pressure of decision. Every document she had uncovered, every hidden ledger, every silent act of her father now converged into a single truth. This place was not meant to be abandoned, even under threat. The neon sign outside flickered again, casting unstable waves of light across the floor, and Hannah slowly turned toward the mirror that concealed the hidden compartment. She approached it with deliberate calm, opened the panel once more, and looked at the metal box inside as if it now looked back at her. This time she did not hesitate. She took out the envelopes again, not to hide them, but to understand them fully. One by one, she laid them across the counter, aligning names, dates, and notes, forming a pattern she had missed before. These were not just acts of charity or quiet assistance. They formed a network, a fragile system of support her father had built over years, connecting immigrants, workers, and strangers who had nowhere else to turn. Hannah suddenly realized the barbershop had never been a failing business in isolation. It had been sustaining something far larger than itself, something invisible to anyone who only looked at numbers. Her phone vibrated again, but she ignored it this time, her focus locked on the documents. Then something unexpected caught her attention at the bottom of the metal box. A small folded blueprint of the barbershop itself. She unfolded it slowly, revealing markings she had never seen before. There were annotations in her father's handwriting showing structural modifications, hidden storage areas, and labeled spaces marked as community access points. Her breath slowed as the realization deepened. This was not just a shop. It had been intentionally designed as a protected space, a place where people could come quietly without judgment, without records, without barriers. The barber chair, the mirror, the back room, even the waiting bench all had dual purposes she had never understood. A soft sound broke her concentration, the front door unlocking slowly from the outside. Hannah froze, instinctively stepping back, her eyes fixed on the entrance. The door opened slightly, and instead of fear, she saw a young man standing there, hesitant, holding a folded piece of paper. He looked uncertain, almost ashamed, and asked quietly if this was still the place her father used to help people find work. Hannah did not answer immediately. She looked at him, then at the space around her, and suddenly understood the continuation of everything she had uncovered. The barbershop was still active, even in silence, still functioning in ways she had only just begun to comprehend. She nodded slowly, allowing him to step inside, And as he did, the atmosphere of the room shifted once more. Hannah realized that tonight was no longer about discovery alone. It was about whether she would allow this hidden system of quiet support to continue breathing, or let it disappear with the past. And as she looked at the empty barber chair, she understood that the next decision she made would define not only the shop, but every life quietly connected to it. Hannah Kim watched the young man settle into the red leather chair, the envelopes and ledger carefully arranged before him, the soft glow of the neon sign painting everything in warm, flickering tones. She felt a quiet determination settle over her, the kind her father had carried every day without acknowledgement, the kind that came from understanding that this shop was more than a business, it was a sanctuary. She walked slowly to the counter, dusting it lightly as her mind raced through possibilities, plans and decisions, each one grounded in the knowledge that she now carried the responsibility for more than herself. Outside, the street remained empty, the world asleep, but inside, the barbershop pulsed with life, memory and purpose, the quiet hum of the radio filling spaces where words were unnecessary. Hannah looked at the young man and smiled faintly, realizing that the shop could continue its legacy only if she embraced both the challenges and the trust placed in her by her father, the people he had helped, and the community that had once come through the door in search of guidance and shelter. She began to sort through the envelopes once more, explaining quietly to him the significance of each, not because he needed it, but because she needed to speak it aloud to anchor the truth she had discovered. Time seemed to slow as they worked together, the rhythm of sweeping, arranging, and unfolding documents becoming almost ceremonial, a way of honoring the quiet labor that had built this place. Hannah's thoughts wandered briefly to her father, imagining him standing beside her, nodding silently, approving the careful, deliberate continuation of his life's work. She felt a sense of continuity, a bridge between past and present, and understood that the shop's survival was not about profit or recognition, but about sustaining a space where people could find support, dignity, and understanding. The young man placed a few of the envelopes in a secure box, and Hannah realized that the act was symbolic, the beginning of a network she would maintain, expand, and protect, just as her father had intended. The night stretched on, each moment filled with quiet decisions and the slow pulse of possibility, and Hannah felt a profound sense of connection to her father's vision, to the community, and to herself. She looked once more at the neon sign outside, the reflection in the window mingling with the barbershop interior, and understood that she had chosen to keep the door open, to honor the legacy entrusted to her, and to ensure that the small, hidden acts of care would continue for those who would come after. And in that moment, as the radio played softly and the envelopes were safely stored, Hannah Kim felt the weight of history and the promise of the future coalescing into a single truth. She could not fix everything, but she could maintain hope, presence, and the spirit of a place that had always been meant to give a little light in the darkness.